thank you very much, because we have much to do today, and many people left us because they have also different things to do, and we have the evening with the reception, also with the experts and the possibility for the participants to join us. Now we make really round tables, so round tables about different topics. And the first topic, I think it's important because also the medias talk about this, and so it must be very important that the media talk about this. This is the migration, yes. And so we have here also a very interesting group, so they can think about this, they can talk about these different aspects of the topic migration. So somebody have a question, you can ask. And you can ask the group, but better ask one expert so we have not lose much time so everybody must answer. So please ask one expert, and then comes the answer. About migration. Everybody is afraid about this.
Yeah, shy.
Who gives the money for the trip, for the migration?
So, I think I have some experience in this. I know, I would say, lots of friends or people that I know who traveled to Germany and to other European countries. It's quite controversial. Some of them sell, if they have a car, they sell. Some of them, they sell a piece of land they have in Syria. And some of them lend money to come to Germany. And it costs between 5 to 8, probably sometimes 10,000. It depends on the type of the boat that they want to come to Greece, for example, from Turkey. It depends on how safe is the boat and how many people are on the boat, which is also very, in my opinion, important thing to consider, because some of these boats are really unsafe, and we know I don't have statistics, but at least tens of people were drowned in the past years in the Mediterranean. But overall, there is an encouragement for people to come from Turkey to Europe. Some of the reasons are because in Turkey work permits have become really difficult to get, and the payments are really, really bad. And when I say in Turkey, those are the Syrian community who fled from Syria to Turkey, and they found an opportunity to come to Germany. I remember in 2014 on Facebook there are secret groups, and of course you can join these groups, but they select if your name is Arabic and you come from Syria, and there are hundreds of thousands of members in these groups. So the organization of the trips even happens on Facebook. People give names, numbers of the people who want to bring them to Europe. They exchange numbers, they say what's the right time, what's the best day, what's the best season to come to Germany. And it was known, in my opinion, in 2014 that there is an open door policy in Germany. So there is two arguments here. One says that refugees arrived on the borders with Germany, and Germany didn't have the can't force them back. Those are humanitarian refugees. The other argument is, no, these people knew that it's an open door policy in Germany. That's why they chose mostly Germany. And let's remember, in the European refugee regulations, if you first come to a safe European country, dritte sichere Stadt, you cannot legally apply for refugee status in Germany, for example. You arrived first in, let's say, in another EU country. But this was broken or frozen, let's say, by the German government in 2014. So yeah, I know lots of people who came through this way, and in my opinion, 10,000 euro is not a very big money.
From Syria, no, but from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, is very.
I have no idea how the Pakistanis and the Afghanis are coming, but for Syrians, $10,000 is manageable.
Yeah.
And the incentives are big in Germany. Like when you arrive, you have the housing, and until you get your refugee status, whether it's protection, the secondary protection or subsidiary protection, or a refugee status. So during this time, you have housing and food. and then you get your status. So you get your job center money. It's around 420 euros, I think now, cash money, and plus the accommodation and the language courses. So there is incentive for people to come, because there is also the perception that they will have a better future in terms of jobs and education in the country.
I have a question to Mr. Timschneider. Is there a possibility, is there a solution? So many people say we need a war against the refugees, we need to gun the sheep or something else. What is the solution to end this?
I just want to, if I'm allowed, I want to add a point to this question and answer your question. This is also my experience, because in 2015 and 16, when this 1 million came to Germany, I used the opportunity to talk to the refugees in Arabic. And I was interested in their stories, and it was very often that they told me that they were shop owners, for example, from Aleppo, well-off people. So not the poor are coming to Germany because it affords $10,000. It's a lot more money in Syria than in Germany. So you have to be well-off to be able to afford for the trip. So the very poor who really need are not coming. The well-off are coming, and they see this as an investment in their future. They say, well, we have to pay. They know how to calculate. They are shop owners. They know, okay, we will give 5,000, but we will get it back in 2-3 months in Germany. So that's the deal. This was this question. The other question, well, I think we should be open. We should be open for Muslims who love Germany, or Europe, European countries, who live here and who are ready to defend our countries and who identify themselves with our political agenda. For example, take the war in Ukraine. There are Muslims in Germany who understand that the sanctions damage Germany, and as they live in Germany, the sanctions damage their country and are against their interest. And also in other political questions, climate policy. Also Muslims don't want to pay for the weather in 200 years or in 300 years. I'm AfD politician. I'm deputy in a regional parliament, and in the last month, it started with Corona, that Muslims came to me and said, well, I would like to vote for you because you are the only one resisting this bullshit policy, but you are always bashing Islam, so I can't. And so it would be better to stop this stupid Islam bashing and to be open for Muslims who are different. And you can't say that all Muslims are the same. That's just my point.
Just one to that point. How realistic is it that Muslims will fight for Germany? I mean, if it's common really to fight there, because Baerbock said we are in war. So, yeah.
I mean,
I don't think this can be realistic.
Not in this war.
I won't say so. There are at least some. I can't say how much, but there are some, and we should be open when they come to us. For example, there's in Berlin, there happened something some years ago. There was, how do you say it, a rocker gang. How do you say it in English?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
There was a German and an Arabic one,
Yeah.
and they were best friends because they shared the same values. It was about being manly, about defending your home, defending your family, defending your wife, and there was a common ground of values. And we, this is really, it's difficult, but if we are open to it, this will develop.
In what direction?
In the direction of a new Islam in Europe who shares our political agenda, which is becoming independent from the USA. In order to make good policy, you have to be aware of which question is more important and which question is less important. And the most important question nowadays, the most important question which stands over all questions is to become independent from the USA.
So you make your enemy your best friend in order to keep the Americans away, or? It seems to me like this, you know?
Excuse me. Yes, it is. A few shortlists, yes. Mr. Zeitz.
Two remarks to the last second questions. The first question, who pays for the refugees when they come here? I think another familiar question, it's I think the most important question, who will pay for this in the future? And I think if you have a look at the homepage of the so-called Committee for Foreign Affairs, yeah? This is the European Committee on Foreign Affairs. The Council on Foreign Affairs, yes. It's an organization from George Soros, you know, and he gives a very clear answer. You can read there article from George Soros himself. The article is entitled "Migration is without any alternative. It's smart to manage it." Yeah? And he is in absolute coincidence with the diction of all the papers which had been managed the migration agenda within the last decades in the United Nations, in the European Union, and so on and so on. They are not see the difference between legal and illegal migration, but of regular and irregular migration. Regular means it's in coincidence with the agenda the decision makers have. So if it fits into the concept to remix the population and to do a special multi-ethnic and multicultural society, then it fits to the ideas. So they see the idea is, and George Soros says it very clear, we have to decide at which place they should come, at which time they will come, what special types of capacities do they have. We want to go to them with buses and aeroplanes to give them the tickets. We will pay for the transport. We will care for the fact that they will come to us very comfortable. They will get their papers before the borderline. They will be ordered on the labor market, and so on and so on. So they are really ready to pay for it, and they don't want to have it as a chaotic situation like in 2015 and 14 and 15, but organized by the designers of a new society which should be a multicultural and multi-ethnic society. So that's the future question. And the second question I want to give a little amount, I think this is really a tremendous mistake to think that it could be possible in the long run to integrate Muslims as sozusagen parts of a Western-oriented society which is based on the fundament of freedom and so, of course, when they are in a minority, they have a very special behavior. When they are not in a minority, the behavior is changing very, very sufficiently and very quick. All the history and everything what is inside in the Quran and in the Hadith and wherever you have the sources from there says the total opposite, that they are in the long run ready to integrate, to subordinate their own perspective under the perspective of the new society where they are come. So the Quran says when you migrate on the way of Allah, you will find all over the world comfortable houses and very good subsidies, and you can realize the Islamization. That's the duty of every Muslim wherever he is, and of course he is ready. It's not his personal decision, but his disposition. Yeah, and this disposition is every time the same within the 1,400 years. They are ready when they are isolated as one single family in a town, for instance. They will completely absorb all the behavior what is normal in the surrounding, but they will change their identity completely when they have more than maybe 10% or what else. And the position is, in fact, this is definitely like a virus, and they cannot decide if they want to behave like this or not. And we made in our association, this academic association, we spoke about anti-rainbow demonstrations. And we also had the idea, why not collaborate with conservative young Muslims? They must be interested in protect the family, in anti-abortion and so on and so on. And we get in contact with them, and some of these young people, also with headscarf and so on and so on, they were fascinated from the idea. They said, yes, we will do it, and so on and so on. Then we had the second and the third meeting, and they said, our parents and our leaders of the mosque where we are regularly there said, you are not allowed to collaborate with Christians, not allowed to collaborate with non-Muslims, because we are in favor with the idea. They should be decadent. They should abort their own children. Abortion is not punished in Islam. It's in principle you can abort also Muslim children when they are less than 3 months, because the soul comes into the body at the age of 3 months. And in general, they are in favor with the idea that we should be we should destroy the cultural and religious fundaments of our own society. They are in favor with this idea.
Before I like to give
genau.
to other position, but because I will ask also a question, but you can also answer this. I will ask you about the role of the Western countries about the migrations, because they invited the people. Yes, they are not coming by themselves, so it's a welcome culture. Yes, and how we can change this. This is also a question, but you can also answer.
Yeah, well, first of all, remember that Kibor gave us a very important information, that is that Saudi Arabia and Iran are experiencing reconciliation. I think Muslim to Muslim are stronger enemies sometimes than Muslim to Christians, and there is no homogenic group of Muslims. They hate each other like crazy and kill each other. If you know,
it's also
a former Christian Democratic parliamentarian, what's his name, who went to ISIS, wrote a book about it.
Totenhöfer.
Totenhöfer. And he interviewed them, and they're really stupid. They're really totally extremist. And there was a council of Muslims, I think in Egypt, and they all rejected it. They reject violence. I've read the Quran twice also, and there is no trace of violence. And it was actually written in times of war. I mean, you can add some more information on between Mecca and Medina. Yes.
Really no trace of
war has been started by Muhammad himself. This is
we're not a religious organization, so I think we are not going to resolve what hasn't been resolved in hundreds and hundreds of years. But other people are referring to the Old Testament also as having these elements, etc. I think we come to no conclusion of the problem, and I agree with the gentleman here that there are incentives. Most of it is an economic incentive. For example, actually my mother was a legal migrant. She came from Turkey, but she came to Germany in 1967-8. The industry was booming. Nobody was talking about Turks cannot integrate, because they were all integrated automatically by going to Bosch and Siemens and Baupund, and and all the Turks wanted to learn German culture and became very familiar with it, and started learning the language, and most of the generation of the 1960s and 70s became very well integrated, and they also started businesses, etc. And now the thing is, I'm just saying that there are complications between, inter-Muslim complications that are being resolved now. President Assad was completely isolated by the rest of the Arab world. He visited the United Arab Emirates. They're going to reintroduce Syria to the Gulf Cooperation Council, to Saudi Arabia, and say we have to stop these wars, these interreligious wars. We in Europe have. We had 30 years war in 18 to 48. There were no Muslims here. That was an inter-Christian war most of the time. And they also, they eradicated their cities. I read Schiller's account of the 30 Years' War and what was done to the city of Magdeburg, where formerly 30,000 people lived. In the end, there were a couple of hundred left.
Yes, but this is more than 600 years ago, and we don't have it now. But in Islam, the Islamic world, it's steadily every day the same. Yeah?
But
I'm just saying there are also the forces of the but there are also the forces of the Treaty of Westphalia who know that this is leading to.
But I must, because I like to say it's not a discussion about Islam. It's about very well. It's good that Mr. Marisa Said said about his experience and but it's important also which role have the Western countries to create this welcome culture and to make this mass migration possible. This was also a question to you.
Yeah, well, I think even Angela Merkel once said we have to address the causes of migration. Mm-hmm. And it was mentioned a lot of times also by the first speaker that there are civil wars, there are wars, there is regime change. Libya was destabilized, Syria was destabilized, there are sanctions. Afghanistan has been destabilized for 20, even 40 years. Mm-hmm. And sanctions against Iran, there are, I think recently there was in the United States Senate, even somebody pointing out that most of the African leaders that made the coup d'etats were trained by the Americans. Yes. So wherever you have a civil war and violence and destruction and people are fleeing, you usually have some kind of an action that leads to this destabilization.
You must be in time. So she have a question.
Say something.
I couldn't say ladies first. The two ladies. Please before. Short question, short answer, please.
Short question. I'd like to know, if possible, from all three of the speakers. Two friends of mine, two Martins, Martin Lichtmes and Martin Sellner, published a little book last year that had the title "Great Replacement or Great Reset?" So, and their controversy in the book was which one is worse, or which one is the real threat, and they both came to different conclusions. And I would like to ask you to have a concept of both, I think. So, great reset as the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum idea of the fourth industrial revolution and the whole globalization thing on the one hand side. And the other thing is great replacement, that means mass migration to overcome classical European societies.
There's only one answer.
Great replacement. Of course, I'm not in favor, don't misunderstand me, I'm not in favor of mass migration. But it happened. Now they are here and we have to make virtue of necessity. And one remark to you, what you've said, this behavior exists. I don't doubt your experience. Yes, but if we tell the Muslims, you are all like this, then they have no chance to change. And that's my point. We just should be open to those Muslims who are different, who want to ally with us, who come to us. There's no parents or imams behind and say you are not allowed. So just being open, this is enough to change the game. And the biggest mistake would be to leave all these Muslims to the established parties and to the governments. We shouldn't do this.
I just want to address one thing. In the Muslim communities, let's say in the Middle Eastern communities, even among the Christians, the authority is always comes first from the church or from the mosque, and then the father, the family, and it's a relationship between God and the family. Mm-hmm. And it is very important to because the people listen to the imams. Like if the imam in Syria says you have to go against Assad, there are thousands of people who will go against Assad. But this is all politicized because the regional countries, for example, Saudi Arabia and Iran, both had different geopolitical interests in the region. And Saudi Arabia was tasked for decades now, and I'm talking about modern Islamic radicalism, right? It was tasked to export Wahhabism around the world. And the Wahhabists or these Salafists, they are the ones who were used as boots on the ground in different places, starting from Afghanistan, Chechnya, Syria, Libya. They waged these wars and they replaced these secular governments. So the radicalization that came was a political task for these, from these countries like Saudi Arabia, which spreaded an ideology and brought terrorism in the entire region. So it's not a solution, but to decrease the amount of radicalism to the minimum, you have to bring these countries who are conflicting each other in the region first together, like Saudi Arabia and Iran. When you minimize the conflicts in the region, you will also minimize the radicalism. Because the same imam, believe me, the same person who was saying in 2011 that the kafirs or the infidels, in one of the texts they say, اضربهم على رقابهم, or hit them on their neck. The same imam which interpreted this in 2011 as beheading, in 2021 or 2022 he interpreted this as hitting him with a stick, not beheading. The same imam, you can see his video on YouTube, the same person saying two different things. So this, in my opinion, when we minimize the geopolitical conflicts in the region, this will also get minimized. And if a lot of people say that the damage has already been done, like there are so many migrants came here, this is their argument, right? So what do? We either kick them out all, like it's a radical approach against them, which causes social problems and probably civil war here, or because the neoliberals nowadays are pursuing a really radical left-wing policies which goes against every single belief that the Muslims have. And this is, I'm seeing this phenomena in the United States. A lot of people who are from the Muslim community are becoming closer to the conservatives in the United States, and especially in the schools, because they're choking the kids with the LGBTQ, for example, ideology, and they're saying, no, I don't want it. And they're starting to be more leaning on the side of the conservatives. So every problem that could be seen as a problem could also come with opportunities and a political field.
And the last question from Dr. Vilkovic.
Yes, I wanted to say that when we are talking about responsibility, we also need to think about whose responsibility is that, because Middle East is so destabilized now. We have a very big destabilization in that region, and I will say that it's not if, for example, NATO started the war in Syria, bombed Libya, and destabilized or had a role in this. So I think the NATO countries or the members of NATO cannot say, oh, it's not our problem, because it is problem. But the main question is, who is the troublemaker? Because I think it's all begins from this US concept of policy, clash of civilizations, Huntington, because they are creating the conflicts. They create the conflict between Shiite and Sunni in the Middle East. They create a lot of conflicts in the former Yugoslavia as well, because when we have this Mujahideens from the Afghanistan, and they're fighting with Bosnians, but the Americans and the Englishmen, they bring them to Bosnia. They didn't come alone. So that is, I think, very important, that someone wants to use religion, like Islam religion, like they want to radicalize, to pronounce this is so-called terrorist religion, and they are working on this. So my question is there any idea to create some program of radicalization to prevent this situation? Because we need this. I think the US and the UK probably, and maybe in Israel as well, because I wanted to mention when you said this imam, do you remember the case that he was arrested, the imam from Libya, who sent the radicalists and sent the people to fight the terrorists, and he was Jewish. So this is the problem. I think we need to create some idea, some program for de-radicalization and preventing this kind
Mr.
of problems.
Tischner, the last comment for this table.
Oh, I would prefer that you or you.
Okay. But I'm a fan of what's So what was the question?
I remember in Egypt in 2013 when Mohammed Morsi came to power, he was supported by the Clintons, and the Muslim Brotherhood came to power in Egypt by the Democrats. And in Tunisia, the Muslim Brotherhood came to power with the Democrats. And in Syria, the funding and arming the Mujahideen in Syria started in 2012 under the CIA program Timber Sycamore, which was again the Clintons who started it. So when you definitely create sectarian tensions in the country by pointing out that the president of your country is from a minority and you have the right to rule, like it's tribalism for them. It's not like all we are Syrians, no, we are different groups, and then the Alevis are in charge or in control of the country for 30 years or 40 years. This is the narrative, so you have to revolt against it. And then it comes tons of weapons inside the country. So there are conditions are being prepared for radicalism in Syria. Like before 2011, how many of you remember any terrorist attack in Syria? Zero. I would say zero. None. One time they tried to blow up the American embassy in 2004 at the Syrian security apparatus, they folded at the last moment. And after 2011, I can't count the number of terrorist attacks that happened. So, in my opinion, when you really integrate the countries in the region on an economic level, and there are interests between them, right? You minimize the chances also for war. Prosperity, welfare are very important factors for the people to feel belonging to a country and not willing to wage war against the state in order to reach power. And this is not gonna happen in the region unless the foreign intervention should come to an end. People need to understand that me as a Christian in Syria, I have a truly harsh feelings toward the United States for what they did in Iraq and for what they did in Syria. They truly harmed us in the region and also harmed the mosaic of the society. It's very difficult now to repair the harmony that used to exist in Syria between the different components of the society because the central state, it has been weakened. And how it is weakened? It's all by covert operations, attempts to overthrow these governments. These countries need to develop their own democracies, and it's not going to happen like in Europe. It's not going to be like in European democratic systems. Each country and civilization, they have own history, culture, roots, and they have to develop their own governance. And when you fasten this process by foreign intervention like they try to do in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and even in Iran recently, they are jumping the stages so that they foil this human development process in these countries to reach to their perfect example of governance that can bring peace, stability, but also development to these countries. These countries aren't backward. We don't live in the desert, we don't live with camels there. We are really rich in civilization, but we truly need some, at least 10 to 20 years of stability. How many wars happened in the past 20 years in the Middle East? And mostly were caused by the CIA. I do not see one time the Russian side intervened and caused war in the region. You cannot find any traces for that.
So thank you very much for this expertise. We go to the next table about the Ukraine conflict. After this is a conclusion. The next table is Dr. Trifkovic, our friend from Poland or Scotland. And the conclusion will be Magister Seitz and our friend from Italy, and the next table. But now this Bergamo and I will set in the middle because I'm the last.
Yours is here, thanks.
So, we have something in common because we know the situation in Donbass very well, and so I think it's important to talk about the future of the Ukraine conflict. Since this special operation began last year, many people was thinking, yes, it is a solution, and in 2 months the Ukraine war is over and everything is free from Nazism or something else, and or other people, they have ideas, so Russia will occupy whole Europe or something else. And I will ask, what is the solution for this problem in Ukraine? The first question to Dragana, what can be a solution for this worst situation there? This is worst for Russia, for the people in Ukraine, for the people in Europe, not for the people in the USA, but we have many victims of this situation there, and what can be a solution? What can we expect?
It's very hard to answer. This is a very important question, and it's not easy to answer. Give a short answer on this. I will say that my opinion is that exactly US started this war in Ukraine, and that this is a war against Russia and NATO on the territory of Ukraine, and not the war between Ukraine and Russia. When we speak about arguments, I don't think that Russia needs more territory. It's the biggest country in the world, so they have a lot of space in the Siberia. They don't have too many citizens there, and so on, too much resources. So I don't think they need to add more territory, but they need to be sure to protect themselves. It's the question of national security for Russia, and that is what the Russian President Putin was telling to us last 10, maybe 20 years. From 2008, I think he openly started to talk about this after this Munich Security Conference, that this is the question, the main question for Russian national security. And on the other side from US, for US, I think this is opportunity to change things in the better way for themselves. I think they need the conflict between Europe and Russia, or let's say Anglo-American powers, we can say like this. And I think it's not a secret, this situation we had in the past as well, and we heard today also that the main problem from US is this integration between Germany and Russia, this technical energy integration as well, economic integration, political integration. So they don't need really this big Euro-Asian project, and this is the weakness for them. So I will mention this document. It was published last year. It was made probably by this RAND Corporation, main think tank, American, for advising the military and so on. But they, of course, they said that it's a fake document. But anyway, in the document you can just read what you can see with your own eyes. And this is that America needs the war in Ukraine to protect this integration of Euro-Asian space region, and they need to weakening Europe, Germany in the first sense, and whole Europe for strengthening the US. So that is the base of this document, and you can read there about bankruptcy. We see it today that this is also a very big problem. Economical problems. So the idea is to resolve these economical problems with new war, and then they think the things will be like they before. So I think that the idea of EU was of administration. Brussels administration was to impose the sanctions on Russia to totally destroy Russian economy, to organize the coup in the Moscow, and then to continue to use the cheap energy from the Russia, because the base how the Europe was developing all this year is one of the segment is that they have the cheap energy from the Russia. Anyway, we have this war. Obviously, we have this war. This war was prepared. We can confirm this now, because Merkel also said that after Minsk agreement, they started to supply the weapon to Ukraine, and then they wanted to preparing the war. So from the Russian side, I know that their argument was that they know they will attack, Ukrainians. So they decided to take this first step and to change the things in other ways. So this is not a usual pattern for Russia to, in the history, Russia was attacked and then defend. So what is the result? Yes, what is idea how we can change things and resolve this problem? First, I think we need to stop this supplying the weapon for Ukraine, because this is the very big problem. Especially as now Great Britain wants to send this weapon with nuclear component. They also use this kind of weapon in Serbia, especially in the south of Serbia, Kosovo, and we are now the first country in the Europe with this. We have this cancer problems with sick people. We are the first country with this kind of problems, but also in Iraq, in Basra region, and so on. Kevork talked today about this. So we need to stop the supplying of weapons. Second, we speak today about the new security architecture, which I think it's very necessary to all of us, for Europe and to whole world. I will say we will have this. It's only the question of time. So we heard some suggestion from China, but Zelensky in Ukraine and the US immediately said no, it's a not good plan. So they don't want any plan. We heard also the suggestions from Turkey in the past for resolving the Ukrainian conflict, and other countries had idea how we can, but the problem is when we have this kind of regime in Kiev, which is supported by US and bring to power by US to create the conflict, we can do anything except to to wait if maybe something will happen in Kiev and they will change again the regime, because this is a legal regime which was brought to power by the coup organized by US. So I think we need a peace. We need to prevent our European countries for suffering from wars. We don't need this. We had this in the past a lot. For in First World War, Second World War, we had after this Yugoslavian wars. We don't need wars. We need peace. We need to develop. And I think this new multipolar world is a good opportunity to live in the peace and with some new rules, not on the command of one world power as America, who wants to tell to everyone how we should live, how we need to live. So the problem is big problem that we don't have at all political elites, like we don't have in Serbia, we don't have in the Ukraine as well. The system is totally corrupt. So we need to try to build some new political elites, new and to stop the war and to use the diplomacy,
Yes.
because diplomacy is the way how we should find the solution, how we can stop this war, I think.
Thank you. What's your comment about
Well,
this?
yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that, as we all know, that we can see the Ukrainian conflict, of course, from the realistic geopolitical perspective as a just struggle of powers. Yeah? And that would be very important, but only one side of the truth. Because we can look at the Ukrainian conflict as one of the many struggles in defense of the hegemony understood as a cultural one, ideological one. And when we think and try to discuss who earns on that war, yeah? Who is that war for, that would be the best to find what to do to stop it. And well, when we can see this war not only as an element of the dominance of the American states or Anglo-Saxon conglomerate of economical, financial, and military conglomerate over the world, we can see that it is also the war and the element of conflict between different models of the capitalism and of capitalistic society we now recognize in the world. The war in Ukraine, in that understanding, is just another step after COVID pandemic, after climate crisis, and after all these states of emergency which became permanent in our realities. Yeah? We have permanent state of emergency, like Georgia Gambit has written a couple years ago. And this is perfect explanation for our elites for any kind of transformation they try to induct on our societies. Yeah? Of course, in general, crisis is perfect explanation. Why we cannot afford that? Why we have food banks in our country? Yeah, because of the crisis. Yeah? Because but I'm nearly 50 and I don't remember any times where there was no crisis. So that is not the best answer for me, because I get used to that. So we need something more emphasized. Yeah? So some exaggeration. So we had, deadly pandemic, and we have been locked for 2 years, yeah, and that was perfect for covering internal problems of neoliberal geoeconomy. Well, after that we could predict that it would be something, really bad with the climate. Yeah, something happens really bad to the question if the face mask prevent climate change would be, very updated, yeah, and on time. But well, yeah, no, I think that the climate disaster is waiting for better times. Yeah, still on agenda for the future, but now we have war, yeah, and now with the war we can explain almost everything. First of all, especially energy transition. Escalated energy transition, which is absolutely devastating for European economies, especially for German ones, because it's put to the grave all the Energiewende, all the energy reform in the German way of this transformation. And of course, with when German economy got a cold, we have all fever. That's in Europe. That's absolutely normal in our situation. So the cutting the energy supply from Russia was absolutely basic for this change. This, let's say, ideological change, because it's not only question of energy, yeah? Not only question of electrical cars or something like that. This is the question how this capitalism will look like in next decades. Will it be this new green agenda, new Green Deal, as they called it, which is absolutely a lie, because Green Deal was pro-productive and pro-consumption, and this is exactly opposite. This is the movement against consumption, against growth, economic growth, against increasing wages and increasing employment and so on. This is exactly opposite. They call it zero growth. Yeah, so this Stasa. 1% of elites will be even wealthier, and the rest of the society will be pushed back to the 100 years ago, to the some kind of not even new feudalism, but it's kind of new slavery, because we will be locked and closed again as slaves. And the element of the same competition is also could be recognized in relations of USA and China. So the Ukrainian war is a proxy war also for the conflict of between Beijing and Washington, because if they want to introduce some general changes in the way of life of the Western societies, they have to also stop import from China, because the industrial base for present for this model of capitalism is China and Vietnamese, Cambodian, and so on production. Of course, we can now find it very destructive for our society, because the movement of the industry there was one of the crucial moments for economic history of our nations. But well, that's the reality. We have fabrics there, and we buy products. Even these electric car batteries came from also from China. We remember what has happened 2 years ago, when the only one ship was blocked in the Suezian Channel. Yeah. For many weeks or even months, there were problems with the chain of supply. Let's imagine what would happen if such a proxy wars would be kept around the Russian and Chinese borders. That would be lockdown on a global scale. So I would say that first step to solve the problem is to become aware that there is a problem. Yeah? And if we understand that it's not only some local war somewhere in the east of the known world, in some small villages we cannot remember the names where the battles are held, that when we think about it as one of the most important transformation, one of the most ways of changes in our lives for decades, now I hope that it advises us to treat this very serious and to think not well, generally, I of course agree with you, but I wouldn't say that we should count, for example, for the change in Kiev, because Kiev is
count
yeah, of course, because Kiev is not the player in that game. Can we think about or predict any kind of change in Washington? Well, finger crossed, but who knows? And well, I believe that if something could be changed by the election in the USA, then there will be no election in the USA. So if they play that game, it's possibly only the game. But we still have some influence on our societies, on our compatriots here in Vienna, in Berlin, in Warsaw, and this is our field of work and our target here, and well, this is something we should say people, because only the truth in our situation can help us. We have to understand how bad it is, but we have to say this harsh truth to our people.
Thank you very much. Now we must look at the time. Excuse me, it's not possible for questions. We make the last round table about the future of Europe. And for this it's important our friend from Italy, please, the table. Mr. Zeretz, Magister Zeretz, please. And I think it's better when I'm moderated. It's possible we can also have a second time institution. Can you also join us? About Yes. No, please. So,
I'll take this.
so today we have many topics. We've also discussed a discussion about energy with Dr. Kneissl and about the Ukraine war, the mass migration and the Islamization, about different topics and the economic situation. And, but we must expect what's happening in the future. And so I will ask, in all this, what we have seen, all this we have discussed, first Magister Zeitz, is the European Union the solution for the European problem? What do you think?
It's a good question. I am ready, of course, to give an answer, but please give me first of all the opportunity
Yes.
to say thank you very much for everybody who came today to the rooms of the Viennese Academic Association. Thank you, Patrick Popper, for this wonderful impresario activity he did, for the idea, for the coordination of the very impressive lectures we had today. We got a lot of information. It had a very, very high level. It is inspiring, and even if we cannot converge in every detail, of course, I think it will bring us a very, very substantial step in order to speak about the future. Let me, in second step, give some personal information about my person, because it's important to understand my position also regarding the Ukraine. When I tell you that I changed my professional identity approximately 1 year ago, totally within some hours, because when the war started, because I must say my wife is from the Ukraine, and she lived within the first 10 years of our marriage, which was in 2011, maybe more than half of the time in Ukraine because of the family. Also our son was the first 6 or 7 years most of the time in the Ukraine, and went into school in the Ukraine, and the family came to us when the war started as a refugee, and we decided to help other Ukrainians. And in the meantime, at this beginning of the war, just some days after the start of the war, we decided to open a very large house as a refugee camp. And now, before I was an economic advisor, and in the meantime I am a housekeeper or something like this. Of a refugee camp. We have 165 refugees from all parts of all over the Ukraine, and this gives me the privilege to be in touch with all the regions and a lot of cities and villages every day via Viber or WhatsApp, and we have direct contacts with the people who are in the Ukraine and what happens in the regions. Third step, before I come to the question of the European Union, I think we spoke about geopolitical aspects of the war, and this is of course a crucial point. But we should not forget another aspect which seems to me very crucial for the fact that the war happened and the escalation come to a war situation. Because we have to see who had been the decision makers within the last years and decades, which gave some activities to undermine the contact between Russia and Europe, whose Americans had been active in preparing the Maidan, for instance. One exponent of the family of my wife was as a very young boy, in the age of 18, on the Maidan when it happened, the so-called Maidan revolution happened, and I asked him, who gave you the weapons, the sniper weapons? And he said they spoke English, and how looked they? They had uniforms, but we didn't know what uniforms, maybe fantasy uniforms. And we were paid, and they were paid in dollars and not in another currency. So it was very clear who had been behind. And it is also very clear that it has a very long history, not even 10 years, but much more longer. The name of Zbigniew Brzezinski had been named on this day today also. But they had been especially ideologically motivated. Zbigniew Brzezinski, Victoria Nuland, the persons who organized the background situation of the cultural transformation within the last years, the hundreds of Soros schools which have been established there, the 3 universities are totally under control of Mr. Soros, the television and broadcasting companies which are organized by these so-called women-like billionaires. They are these who are the organizers, and they have a special ideology, and they are not capitalists, but they are socialists, they are Trotskyists. The neocons are Trotskyists, all of them, everybody. Yeah? The founder, and Victoria Nuland is married, her husband is the most prominent living neocon, Richard Kagan. He is also one of these persons who signed this so-called project for a new American century. And it is not just America, it is a leftist and neo-Trotskyist America. And therefore I resist to say that it is capital, that we are not living in a capitalist situation. This, what I think is, I call it neo-syndicalism. It's a mixture of both elements from both systems. It's both socialists and both so-called capitalists. It's and coming to your question regarding the European Union, the European Union is one of the organizations or one of the structures which created the existence of neo-socialistic syndicalism. So the patterns of the European Union, for instance, the most important so-called anti-discrimination agenda, is one of the most important preconditions for transforming the situation of the countries. Yeah? We are not ready to resist against the destruction of the cultural basement. We are not ready, we are not allowed to resist migration, mass migration, and all the bad things which will happen. Of course, there are people who are really rich, but they are not capitalists. They are very, very strong linked to the government, very strong linked to the structure which had been involved in the last decades. And this is a very, very, very new type of political engineering what had been involved or maybe had been planned for a very long decade.
Okay. Yes, it's important to know that the European Union is one part of this system first. Yes. I'd like to give the possibility to make a question to our Italian friend, because he should also have a stage. What is happening in Italy? Is there different questions about the role of Italy now? We have the new government and everything was hopeful about this, but now we see they're also supporting Ukraine. And is there a question?
I have a question about the new government of Ms. Meloni. As far as I can perceive or interpret the information, is it true that the migration problem isn't really being tackled by the new right-wing government, or have they just not yet started, or are they not interested in doing something on the migration issue?
So first of all, let me say that first in Italian I'm Lombard, because for me it's very important to underline, because you know in my country the differences between North and South are the same differences between Denmark and Morocco. So, by the way, honestly, I'm not very optimistic about the European in general, and by the specific point of view, also in my country. I explain my reasons. In Europe, we forgot about any basic element about meritocracy, proudness. I was a member of the Council of Europe. Is an absolutely useless institution by my point of view. We spend public money to tell to the countries if they respect or not respect human rights. For example, in Azerbaijan, that I was hearing about Muslim Islamic problems. Okay, in Azerbaijan sometimes they put some persons that they consider extremist or terrorist in jail, and the Council of Europe spend public money and days to tell to Azerbaijan government that they have to choose better if they have extremist or not. I think that it's pretty hard that someone in an office in Strasbourg or in Brussels has the possibility to understand the real troubles about extremism. I make you another example, and then I answer to your question. We now, in a masochist way, we are taking drugs that climate is changing, and so we have to change our systems, our society, and so on. I make you an example because it's easier to say, no, my opinion is not changing, and your opinion is changing, what to do. More than 2,000 years ago, during the Roman Empire, in Britain, today England, there was the production of wine for the legends. Today it's not possible anymore to produce wine in England because it's too much cold. I don't have memory that the ancient Roman Empire was moving with airplane or motorbikes or making a lot of smoke. So I think that for sure we have to take care about everything, but we have not to exaggerate. And more than everything, we don't have to be masochist, and we are masochist because we are not proud anymore. We take care about philosophical things, but not about our identity, our proudness, and so on. Going to my country, I'm not very optimistic because I support this government. My political party is inside this government, so on. But first of all, we choose a behavior to try to not have troubles inside the establishment, inside the good boys, friend of this European Union and friend of international institution. It's a good choice if you wanna rule in stable way. But it's a bad choice if you want to be free to take right choices. And I think that what is happening is that my country is not free in this moment to take right choices, because I made the example of Tunisia. We have a good position, but we have to ask to the Monetary Fund, to the European Union, please let's do something to Tunisia, because in a serious country it would choose to say to the international fund, I do whatever I want and I help Tunisia because I want to stop illegal immigrants tomorrow. That's it. And about many international choices, unfortunately, it's the same. If you read the local newspaper, the local declaration, we have also good advices, but we never keep a strong position. And this is a good government. Can you imagine if instead of the right side, in this moment, there would be the local liberal friend of the new secretary of the Liberal Party is Schlein. She's okay. You can read by yourself on the web. It's a specific person.
Thank you very much. For organizational reasons, please can you moderate the next 10 minutes, okay? And the next question, please, for answer Mr. Tilschweiger, about Germany, please, the next question.
I would like to answer on the question of Europe's future.
No one don't believe in that.
Yes, because is there a special question about Germany? Okay, I don't think so. I will talk about Europe, about my point of view, and in order to understand the European Union, I think you have to consider firstly that it's not in favor of Europe, but it's directed against Europe. The aim of the European Union is to destroy Europe and to keep Europe as an ally of the United States. I understand the European Union as the economical branch of the NATO. And you know what the first General Secretary of the NATO said about the NATO. It's, the aim of this organization is to keep the Americans in, the Russians out, and the Germans down. And it's the same with the European Union, in my opinion. And so we have to leave it. We have to leave it, and we have to build a new Europe. And this is no utopia. This is, I think, very realistic, because the Brits left Europe. Our colleague Andy Mölzer, he was sad about it. I didn't really understand. I'd like to ask him why, because I'm glad about Britain leaving the European Union. I think that the Germans should also do it, and this would be the end of the European Union. And my party is working for the Brexit, Dexit, we call it Dexit, Germany leaving the European Union. And we really should try. And this is our, now the European elections are coming, and this is one of our main aims. And we are going with this demand in the elections. Germany has to leave the European Union because it only makes damage. And but then we have to build a new Europe. And now we are discussing about this in our party, and we are now writing our program for the elections. And I am very in favor of a new Europe, of a Euro-Asian Europe, and what has been called the axis Paris, Berlin, Moscow. Because the European Union also it's not the full Europe. It's concentrating on the western part and Poland and some Eastern European countries, but it keeps Russia out. And this is not the whole Europe, because the whole Europe, if you really want to build a new Europe with a cultural identity and not technocratic construction, you have to include Russia, because it's there's the three branches. It's the Romanic cultures, it's France, Italy, Spain. The Germanic cultures, it's Northern Europe, Germany, Austria, and the Slavic cultures. These three branches are the European unity, and also the two branches of Christianity. We have the Catholics and the Orthodox, and they form the unity, the Christian unity. So I'm in favor of a rich Europe, the full Europe. And in order to reach this game, we have to build it completely new. So we have to destroy European Union, and then we have to build new Europe, Paris, Berlin, Moscow.
There was a question.
Do you think that USA will make some kind of intermarium, Poland, Romania, against Germany, not against Russia? Against Russia, intermarium from the North Sea to the Black Sea, Poland and Romania in the same country with the west part of Ukraine against Germany.
No way. Who wants to go against Germany?
Poland, Romania, and the West Ukraine.
Okay, and who is behind this?
For Americans against German, some kind of intermarrying. Do you believe in that? That something like that will happen?
It's
That Germany need to pay
Reparations, you mean?
reparation to Poland to make a new country from that reparation, and that will be American project.
Yeah, of
Russia
course,
will be in the Asia.
Of course, they try. This is one of their plans, but we won't pay. Even the government, the actual government, which is not very patriotic, refused to pay this 1.3 billion euros. So we won't do this. And of course, there are many bad plans. The USA are trying to destabilize every region in this world, because this is a concept of government. Yes, and we have to stabilize. We have to stabilize Europe, and stabilizing Europe means to integrate the whole cultural unity.
Yes.
So there is already economic crisis in Germany, but the predictions, for example, from Simmerhurst, that next winter will be the harshest for Germany in terms of the energy security of Germany. So the things are going into deterioration. Do you think if there was a big economic crisis in Germany, would this be? Will the people think to vote for an alternative, for example, like AfD in Germany, because they reach into desperation, economic desperation, and they will always choose an alternative party that wasn't part of the establishment?
Of course. This is also what I know, that the big crisis will come next year, because I'm a member of regional parliament, but also member of a city parliament and even below. So I'm what you call kommunale Ebene, how do you say it? How do you say it in English? Yes, municipality. So they managed to avoid the big crisis for now, but in the next year it will come. And of course, this will bring us, my party, a new popularity. Every Monday since 2 years, it began with Corona, I organize a demonstration. Every Monday in my city, and the participants between 50 and 1,000. And I saw in the summer that when the price of the fuel was over €2 per liter, I had 500 demonstrants. Now it became cheaper. Mm-hmm. It's about €1.60, and I have 100 demonstrants. So it's a correlation, and I think that the big crisis will really bring the political change, and we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. The opposition party has to be prepared. We have to be on the street even now, so that the people, when they awake, they have to know where to go. Well, that's our task, and that's how we are working now.
Are you ready to put hands with the likes of Sarah Wagenknecht and the rest in Germany, or you think there are two left?
No, I might to speak for myself. Yes, yes, I would take her hands, because we have to leave this left and right discussion behind us. Yeah. It's now it's not about being left or being right. It's about being for the international elites or against them, for the people or against them. This is the question of the future. And Sarah, I like her. She's very intelligent, and I share 90% of what she's saying, of her standpoint.
Yeah. Can we pass this question also to Italy?
Yes,
I wonder.
This will be the last question.
Yeah, so if you could say, because we could observe, we can see that there is a shift of Meloni policy before election and after election, about the United States, about the Ukrainian conflict, there is a change, of apparent change, if someone knows something more about, but Italian politics, as I understand that, that is the question for you, is also changing because what? Also your party, I remember Lega Lombarda in the times of Bossi leadership, it was a bit different party than Lega Nord and Lega after that. So what is the direction of the changes in Italian politics? And do you believe that if you face again or constantly this crisis, migration crisis and energy crisis, and also COVID crisis, because it was one of the longest pro-COVID politics in Europe, in Italy. How do you think, how can internal situation, political situation in Italy, transform us more?
The problem is that after 2010-11, when they elected a strong, proud government with inside my political party of Berlusconi fell down for economic reason, maybe fell down because it was supporting and beginning the construction of South Stream from Russia under the Black Sea to the South Italy. It fell down for different reasons. From that moment, we had one technical government, another technical government. We had the government between my political party and 5 stars for 1 year. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the politicians in my country, they are afraid about international ingerences in their national policy. And so even this government has chosen the way to be able to rule, but forgetting the freedom and to keep the original positions. And even my political party, honestly, I'm a bit nostalgic if you want, but now we have not the main topic is that in the past even my political party had a project. You can be agree or not agree with this project, but we had a political project. Or if you want, in other words, in romantic words, we had a dream. Today we are just a political party without a real political project. So we are much more, we are weak. And the day after we go to rule, if you don't have a dream, a project, anybody can do whatever they want because you don't have anymore a goal to get. This is the problem in this moment. Unfortunately, we were the first victims inside the European Union after Greece, okay, let's say the first big country victim of the international institution, international organization, and what you know.
And to bring it to the point, there is only one Viktor Orban in this Europe.
Yes, Orban is the only one.
No, there is two, Milorad Dodik. They said, so if you don't want, if you threat with me with sanctions, go for it.
Viktor Orban. I think I'm very much in favor with your idea regarding to build a new territorial work together with also with some Middle Asian countries, including maybe Azerbaijan and maybe Kazakhstan and of course Russia and all the other regions in the east. What I missed within the discussions of our afternoon, we spoke about economic crisis, about economic destruction, about military conflicts, and about material things. I didn't hear something about the idealistic or religious fundament of every society. And if we are just defensive, and we spoke about Islam and in a defensive way, why don't are we ready to speak about Islam with respect to offensive? It's one of my dreams. Why not to speak about Christianization of Azerbaijan? Azerbaijan was the first Christian country all over the world. It was 300 years before Armenia had been Christianized. Azerbaijan was Christian. and there are also rudiments in Kazakhstan of Christian culture, and so on and so on. It's an old wisdom of game theory. If you just be defensive, you cannot win the game. You must be also offensive. And the Italian senator and philosopher Marcello Pera wrote in 2009 a very important book which is entitled Warum wir uns Christen nennen müssen, why we must name ourselves Christians. If we are believing Christians or if we are cultural Christians. And as you know, Marcello Pera himself is an atheist, but he had a very strong friendship with Pope Benedict XVI. And they agreed that the fundament of a functioning and economically well-organized society must be a religious component, a religious basement, a religious fundament. Marxism was also something like a religion. The Islamic countries have their religious fundament, and we don't in Europe. We don't have. We left it completely. Yeah? So that is an aspect which I missed within our discussion. I think it's most important. Every revolution has two components: a material one and a spiritual one, and we should think about the second also.
Thank you for these last words. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy that we are finishing this discussion with also this aspect of religion. It's very important for Europe. And I'm very happy that our discussion was not political, it was scientific. This is very important. And this also is a very big problem in Austria also, but in Europe. So we have no scientific discussion, only ideology. They're only talking about ideology. You can see it in this discussion about climate change, about refugees, or something else, or about Russia. So it's only ideology. It's not realistic discussion. And so I think it was the first step for to grow up this tradition, so we can have every year one Vienna Security Conference. And I'm very happy about this, and I wish everyone the best and nice evening. So,